Hurricanes, large, lumbering, low-pressure systems. These storms devour coastal towns, devastate beaches, rip apart homes and livelihoods, and kill hundreds, if not thousands, of people.
These megastorms both frighten and fascinate those living along the East Coast and Gulf Shore. To protect those people, there's a concentrated, coordinated effort to keep them safe.
In the next half hour, we'll dive into the many aspects of these tropical systems, including how they form, the dangers here at home, and what you can do to get prepared. This is Safety in the Storm.
You're watching Safety in the Storm, tracking the tropics.
Hello, and thank you for joining us here on Safety in the Storm. I'm Chief Meteorologist John Carroll.
And I'm meteorologist Kara Thompson. Well, all it takes is one of these hurricanes to change your life forever.
Yeah, we've seen the remnants of several of these storms reach the southwestern portion of Virginia. Some, like Hurricane Juan or Hurricane Michael, still have a lasting impression left on everyone's lives and in their memories.
Forecasts and timings of these devastating storms have gotten more precise in the past several years, but you still need to be safe and informed.
Yeah, before we get into how to get ready for a storm like this, you need to know how they form. WFXR's meteorologist Gary Boyer digs deeper into how these massive systems develop.
All right, so we'll take a little bit of time to talk about how tropical systems originate as we head into the core summer months of like September, well, more so probably August and into September. We really have to look far out into the Atlantic Ocean where storms tend to originate coming off of the African coast. These are just sample systems that we're going to be looking at. A tropical depression can form almost right away as it comes off of the African coast, or it at least tends to, as conditions really become more favorable in the open waters to develop tropical systems. So as it happens, it becomes a tropical systems, or a tropical depression rather, with winds of about 38 miles per hour or less. If it does strengthen, it can become a tropical storm. This is where the system would ultimately get a name. And we can have winds, say, between about 39 and 73 miles per hour as this does keep traversing over open waters of the Atlantic Ocean. If it does continue to strengthen, it can become a Category 1 hurricane with winds between 74 and about 95 miles per hour. This is where it really does start to get its act together. There are limiting factors as well with tropical development. If a weak system interacts with what's known as wind shear, which is the change of wind with direction and speed with height, that can help to shear away the system and really weaken it pretty significantly, especially a low-end tropical depression or a tropical storm. Now, a hurricane interacting with wind shear can have similar impacts, but it can just take longer for it to weaken, or not necessarily dissipate, but certainly lose its intensity. So wind shear really can be an inhibiting factor with tropical development in the open waters of the Atlantic. But another aspect that we really do pay attention to are the ocean temperatures, the sea surface temperatures, if you will. I've put some sample totals up here, and you can see here as we look into the Gulf of Mexico and into the Caribbean, anywhere where you see temperature at least 80 degrees or higher, that is prime condition for tropical development here in the open waters. If you have temperatures a little bit below 80 degrees, development can still happen, but it can happen either very slowly or just kind of maintain its status. So really, we need ocean waters at least 80 degrees or higher for that development to take place. But once you get into the mid-70s and beyond, tropical systems really cannot develop with ocean temperatures at that temperature, shall we say. So 80 degrees and higher and little to no wind shear really is what's needed with tropical development in the Atlantic.
Well, thank you very much, Gary. You know, it's important to know the power and strength of hurricanes so we can prepare to escape the devastation with the least amount of damage possible.
Well, each year, the National Hurricane Center and other institutions put out a forecast to get people ready for what to expect.
Yeah, I spoke with Dr. Brennan, the lead forecaster for the National Hurricane Center, who gives us a deeper look into what those insights do. Around the middle of spring, there's a gentle buzz of anticipation in the meteorological community as the Climate Prediction Center releases the seasonal outlook for the tropical Atlantic. But what's the motivation for the outlook? It is rather vague, just providing the number of storms, the possible intensity levels of the storms, above average season, below average season, etc. Well, Dr. Michael Brennan of the National Hurricane Center gives his insights.
The overall goal of it is obviously from a scientific perspective. We're trying to, push the boundaries of science in terms of what we can predict in terms of, overall seasonal hurricane activity. And then when it comes out in May, it's a great reminder that, hey, hurricane season's about to start. You need to get prepared for the upcoming season.
In other words, you need to start thinking about these megastorms, the damage they can do, and the impact they can make on your life. But that's not the end of the outlooks. There's an update that comes out in August.
The reason they do an update in August is that when you're that close to the peak of the season, you have a much better idea of what the overall large-scale conditions are going to be like as we head into that August, September, October timeframe, which is when you tend to have the bulk of the activity in the Atlantic Basin.
There is no misunderstanding to the basic need for the outlook. It's all about awareness.
Because on the climate scale, you're really only able to talk about what the seasonal activity is going to look like for the basin as a whole. We don't really have a sense of where the storms are going to form, where they're going to go, where the impacts are going to be.
So when you see the seasonal outlooks, both the initial and the update, talk about them. Have fun discussing them. Debate their validity. But as you're doing all that, start to prepare for the season that is just around the corner. Now, that's sound advice, that's for certain. Just get prepared for the season. But what is a normal hurricane season? And how's this season shaping up? Well, the National Hurricane Center's normal prediction is 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 of those are major hurricanes.
Well, last week, the National Hurricane Center released its prediction for 2022, saying it expects 14 to 21 named storms, 6 to 10 hurricanes, and 3 to 6 of them becoming major hurricanes.
Well, when we come back, hurricanes create 2 major impacts when it comes to our region. But it's not the dangerous storm surge. After the break, we tackle the effects of winds from water from these storms.
But first, a weather trivia question for you. How many times is the tropical outlook updated each season? Is it 1, 2, 3, or 5? The answer when we return. We'll be right back on WFXR's Safety in the Storm. Welcome back. So, how many times is the tropical outlook updated each season? Is it 1, 2, 3, or 5? The answer is 1. Forecasters put out their original reports before the season and then update it 1 time halfway through the season.
You know, hurricanes don't just hit the coast really hard. They can also really hurt us here at home in Virginia.
Definitely. And when it comes to hurricanes, 2 big things impact our region the most. That's inland flooding and gusty winds. Knowing the dangers of both can keep you safe.
Yeah, so what is inland flooding? Well, it's the main concern for forecasters right here in Western Virginia. So let's take a deeper look. Over the past several years, the meteorological technology has improved significantly with respect to forecasting tropical cyclones, pinpointing their landfall locations, their times, and intensity. There's usually plenty of lead time for the folks along the coast to either board up and hunker down or just flat out evacuate. Unfortunately, there are still a number of fatalities each year when these monster cyclones hit the coast, and that's hard to avoid. And storm surge is the #1 killer with respect to hurricane-related fatalities. But inland flooding is #2, and that's what we have to be concerned about here in Virginia. Dr. Michael Brennan from the National Hurricane Center has more insight into the inland flooding scenario.
We've seen just in the past 5 hurricane seasons is about 65% of the fatalities in the United States from tropical storms and hurricanes have been from freshwater flooding.
And our region is no stranger to inland flooding catastrophes. We have all the ingredients for significant flooding potential. So, given our topography, flooding from tropical cyclones have had historic impacts on the area. From Camille in 1969 to Juan in 1985, and even a few more recent examples, Florence and Michael in 2018. Our area has the perfect mix of hills and basins that combine for horrific results when tropical moisture arrives in force.
So anytime you have that deep tropical moisture that gets pulled up with a storm, a lot of times making landfall along the Gulf Coast, and you have that deep tropical moisture pulling up into the mountains and getting that extra lift there, you can get some really heavy rain rates, some really high values of rainfall just in a short period of time. And as you know, in the topography there, especially from the Blue Ridge westward You're in those very steep terrain, very flash floody type creeks and streams, small basins that are going to respond really quickly to that rainfall and can go from very low water levels all the way up to moderate or major flood stage at a place like the Roanoke River at Roanoke in just a matter of hours.
So, before the storm arrives, know your risk. Get a plan in place, prepare your home, have an emergency kit set up, and get communication squared away. During the storm, if you can, get to higher ground. Obey all evacuation orders. Practice electrical safety, avoid floodwaters, and keep your cell phone handy. After the storm, stay informed. Avoid flooded areas and disaster areas. Wait for the all clear, and then contact family members to make sure they know you're safe. And download the WFXR News app to stay safe and informed.
The other big danger for Southwest Virginia is catastrophic winds. These storms are some of the strongest on the planet, and just like tornadoes, the winds can cause a lot of damage as well. So let's go ahead and take a deeper look.
You can't see the wind, and it doesn't always feel like it's very much, but it can be really a force to be reckoned with.
One of the most notable hurricane threats is strong, powerful winds.
If the wind speed goes from 50 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour, you might think that was double the damage, but actually it's 4 times. That means that as the hurricane strength grows, the damage goes up disproportionately.
These winds are such a destructive force that meteorologists categorize hurricanes by their wind speed using the Saffir-Simpson wind scale. This hurricane wind scale estimates potential property damage based only on the hurricane's maximum wind speed. A Category 1 hurricane contains winds 74 to 95 miles per hour, which can cause some roof damage as well as snap tree branches and down some power lines. A Category 2 hurricane produces winds between 96 and 110 miles per hour, which can cause major roof and siding damage and uproot some trees. Hurricanes rated Category 3 and higher are known as major hurricanes. A Category 3 storm can have winds between 111 and 129 miles per hour. Many trees will be uprooted or snapped in these conditions. Well-built homes can even sustain major damage. Category 4 and Category 5 hurricanes are capable of producing catastrophic damage. Areas impacted by these destructive storms will likely be uninhabitable for weeks or even months. William Davenport, director of the Virginia Tech Stability Wind Tunnel, has seen what strong winds can do. A few people have even experienced hurricane-force winds at their facility.
We've been up to wind speeds that would be equivalent to Category 4 and Category 5 and so on. And it's very uncomfortable for the people doing it, but that's also much easier than it would be standing in a hurricane, because the wind in the wind tunnel, as you point out, is very, very steady. So it's a constant force pushing on you. And whereas in a hurricane, it will not be. It will gust and so on.
But it's not just the winds that can be so dangerous.
There will be debris in the wind in a hurricane, especially the faster it's going, and this is at least as much a hazard as the wind itself.
Whether it's a gentle tropical breeze or Category 5 hurricane force winds, the answer is the same. Stay weather aware and don't underestimate the power of what you can't see.
That is sound advice. Well, when we return, once a hurricane starts spinning up in the Atlantic Basin, teams across the country and here at home grab their go bags. We take a look at how the Red Cross prepares to send help. But first, when does a tropical storm graduate into a hurricane? Is it when it's sustained winds at 74 miles an hour, a storm surge over 10 feet, when the storm makes landfall, or when gusts are over 100 miles an hour? The answer after the break. You're watching Safety in the Storm.
Welcome back. So, when does a tropical storm graduate to become a hurricane? The answer is A, when the winds become sustained at 74 miles per hour. Well, getting prepared early is the best way to keep yourself safe from hurricanes, but organizations are also doing their part now to get ahead of the busy season.
Yeah, a very important agency here at home is working very hard to make sure that they're ready to go before any of the storms form in the Atlantic, and that is the American Red Cross.
WFXR's Good Day Virginia anchor Amanda Kenny sat down with one man on what he does once he gets the call.
First thing I do is just get my suitcase and start packing. When Dwayne Puckett gets the call, he immediately gets to work.
Get a haircut, pay your bills, get all your affairs in order. Shorts, pants, sweatshirts.
He's often gone for 2 weeks at a time, not knowing where he'll stay.
Sometimes it's a staff shelter, sometimes it's a motel.
Or what he'll see.
It changes after you do it a while, and I do it as long as I can.
He's a volunteer with the American Red Cross.
Seen on TV the need for people, plus I was just wanting to change in my life at the time.
And it did change his life.
Well, 5 years ago, before all this, I was an alcoholic. So I had to change my people, places, and things. And with the help of AA and church and all that, I had to, instead of being at a bar or drinking all the time, I started, volunteering, doing other stuff to get my mind off of it.
Now, Dwayne's doing what he can to help folks in their toughest days.
They need a hot meal while they're rebuilding their life. Throughout the neighborhoods, handing out emergency supplies.
He's responded to tornadoes in the Midwest, wildfires in California, and hurricanes in Louisiana, Florida, and the Carolinas, always willing to leave home and help.
I open up the deployment information pretty much all through hurricane season, and his name is always on the list of heading for a deployment, so I know he's always ready to go.
Dwayne says the devastation can be hard to take in.
It was kind of a shock to see it, not only on the news, but see it in real life.
But he knows his work with the Red Cross is appreciated. For instance, one time in Louisiana.
We was feeding every day. We'd be at the feeding spot at a certain time each day, and this child made me a little necklace, to help me out. That meant a lot too.
It's become more than volunteer work to Dwayne.
You think about it as helping, not just thinking that I'm one with them.
It's now part of his everyday mission in life.
Trying to make it a better place.
Local in Roanoke, Amanda Kenny, WFXR News.
Wow, that's a fantastic story.
It really is.
Really good. Those organizations are already helping people here at home in Kentucky as well as across the globe in places as far away as Ukraine.
Well, making sure you have everything you need is important ahead of these storms. And guess what? We've got you covered this morning with just some of the items you should include in your emergency safety kit. For example, definitely a flashlight so you can see in the dark if the power goes out. We have our canned food, non-perishable items, as well as a first aid kit that will probably come real in handy.
Yeah, and you don't want to keep the lines of communication open, so you want to make sure you have your cell phone and you got your cell phone charged as well. So you want to make sure that you contact folks to let them know that you're safe or to find out any information what's going on.
Definitely.
All right. Well, we have more than one hurricane season, so just ahead. But first, what's the second leading cause of death related to tropical cyclones? Is it tornadoes, rip currents, wind damage, or inland flooding? The answer when we come back. You're watching Safety in the Storm.
Welcome back. So what is the second leading cause of death related to tropical cyclones? Well, the answer is inland flooding, which is definitely something that we deal with when it comes to tropical storms here in Southwest and Central Virginia.
And that was interesting. That came about over the past 5 years. It's really been increasing in problematic scenarios as far as inland flooding deaths are concerned.
It really does. It really does.
But we do have the names for this season already, and that's kind of fun to look about and just kind of check out, see if your name's in there.
Yeah, sometimes it is. My name is never in there.
There's never a Kara?
No, not so far, so.
Well, there's always usually a John in one place or another.
Yes.
anyway.
But definitely that's our full names right there as far as the 2022 Atlantic hurricane season. And thank you for joining us here on Safety in the Storm, Tracking the Tropics.
Yeah, and remember to download the WFXR weather app to make sure that you're prepared ahead of the storm. Please stay safe, everybody.